We provide you with the lowest per GB rates, night or day. SLT 4G, driving you ever forward.
Tonight, historic landing. China Lunar Rover successfully touches down on far side of the moon. State media reported the rover transmitted back the world's first close-range image of the far side. Here at home, broader alliance. The SLFB says that they are in discussion with political parties to form a broader alliance. Who will be part of this? Who will lead this? Yes, I did it. Director Operations of the Anti-Corruption Force Jamal says that he did forge educational documents. However, says the claims of a presidential assassination is true. Tonight, Thursday, January 3rd, 2019.
මේ උත්සව සමයේ ස්මාර්ට් ඇන්ඩ්‍රොයිඩ් තාක්ෂණයෙන් එන සිංග විස්ටා TV එකක් මිලදී ගන්නා ඔබට හිත පිරෙන්න වාසි රැසක් ඕනෑම සිංග ප්‍රදර්ශනාගාරයකින්.
From Ada Derana, this is Ada Derana First at 9 with Ndivari Amuata and Mahesh Jani. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
And a very good evening and welcome to First at 9 right here on Ada Derana 24.
Hello there. We have political controversies, new beginnings, broader alliances and party restructures being discussed. But we begin tonight's broadcast with a historic landing. Almost 50 years after the first ever moon landing, China claims to have successfully landed a robotic spacecraft on the far side of the moon. It is the first ever such attempt and landing, with the last crewed landing being Apollo 17 back in 1972.
Now, Chinese state media reported that the uncrewed Challenge 4 probe touched down in the South Pole Aitken Basin. It is carrying instruments to analyze the unexplored region's geology as well as to conduct biological experiments. The landing is being seen as a major milestone in space exploration. There have been numerous missions to the moon in recent years, but the vast majority have been to orbit, fly by, or impact the Challenger 4 probe. Now, it has already sent back its first pictures from the surface, and with no direct communication link possible, all pictures and data have to be bounced off a separate satellite before being relayed to Earth. Previous moon missions have landed on the Earth-facing side, but this is the first time any craft has landed on the unexplored and rugged far side.
And we have some developments in business and politics. In its roadmap for 2019, the central bank highlighted the need for a rapid boost in exports and foreign direct investment, insisting that it should be a priority for policymakers, without which the external sector will remain vulnerable to short-term domestic and external shocks. Speaking today at the Export Development Board, Subject Minister Malik Samaravikrama meanwhile revealed that the island's investment promotion agency is in the process of negotiating export-oriented foreign investments in order to drive accelerated delivery to the economy. There was also, however, a comment made on free trade agreements. As Malik Samaravikrama said, that Sri Lanka must now look outwards toward new trade pacts. However, it was only this week that the report of the Committee of Experts that studied Sri Lanka's much debated FTA with Singapore showed that entering into trade agreements of no use for the island, while nothing, and this restricts the government's sovereignty.
We are encouraging more people to be an export champion, and these will see the real impact on the ground. Countries that have prospered in the world have done so by being oriented outward. Sri Lankan companies are good at many things, and there is a global demand for our products. We need now to focus on diversifying our product basket, and we need to enter new markets. This is the year for accelerated delivery.
Sri Lanka targets to achieve $20 billion in export earnings during 2019, an envisaged increase of about 17%, and for 2025, $37.1 billion, an increase of 177% from export earnings in 2015.
Our export target for 2018 was $17.4 billion in merchandise and service exports. And I believe that we will end up with $17 billion. And if not for this political unrest that we had, I'm sure we'll have achieved the target of 17.4. Still, this performance is noteworthy, considering that our exports were just 13.4 billion in 2015. And since then, it has grown by 27% in 3 years. I'm sure these exports also have not taken into account some of the industries that we are hoping to set up, particularly in rubber industry as well as the steel manufacturing industry. The POI is negotiating with some of the companies to bring these investments in, and they're all export-oriented industries.
Minister Samara Wickrama responded to questions raised by journalists on the report prepared by the committee appointed to examine the Singapore FTA.
So I don't think that is correct. We just got the report, we'll have a look at that. These are also some opinions of some people. I mean, they are not experts in trade as such. They are not experts in trade. So we are looking at how we can improve trade, how we can improve our exports, and without exports. So we have to look at the world, and we have to look at the world market and see how we can enter that. I agree that we have to look at improving the other areas, productivity, improving ease of doing business. All those have been done simultaneously. If we wait for them to be done and without doing anything on the export sector, we are not going to get anywhere.
What was the impact of the past political crisis on your...
Investor confidence has dropped. We have to rebuild that. People want a very particularly strong country, and then we have to be stable. Politically, we have to be stable to bring the investors in. You see how much of money has flown out during these 2 months.
Being a cabinet minister, do you see that the president and the cabinet is on one page to move forward for...
Well, as a government, we are on one page, and these are all things I don't want to go into too much details. But we have been for too long not looking outwards, we are looking inwards, and we have not got anywhere. For 70 years of independence. Look at ourselves now and look at countries who are behind us.
Now, staying with the topic, officials of the central bank were quizzed yesterday on expatriates allegedly approved by the central bank to be involved in the island nation's banking sector through the Singapore Free Trade Agreement.
Also, Governor, speaking of the Singapore FTA, the 20th section of the expert committee report on the Singapore FTA states that the Monetary Board had approved a certain number of expatriate officers to Sri Lanka through the FTA. Do you have any idea about this?
There's no, what we have incorporated in the FTA under financial services, actually, we are the ones who negotiated that one. Is what we have incorporated the exactly current terms and conditions and status that is applicable. We incorporate that into FTAs. This is a number of expatriates who can come in. So the banking sector is already given in the banking directions that we have given.
There has been no relaxation. Am I right? There is no relaxation.
Well, the Singapore Free Trade Agreement has been dodged by numerous issues since its signing. But of course, to discuss more on this, we have with us Subhashini Abesinghe, Research Director of Verite Research. Thank you for joining us. But I think Minister Malik Samara Wickrama says that the expert committee that was appointed by the President to look into this matter, not really experts, but however, this issue has been quite controversial because there are questions being asked about the validity of the agreement in terms of how it allows Sri Lanka to explore new markets and then export development, foreign direct investment. But you have been holding this particular view that Sri Lanka should not enter agreements unless it is essential for the country to move into these pacts. Do you still remain in that stance?
So what the stance we have taken is not that we should not enter into trade agreements, but the fact that benefits Sri Lankan exporters can get from trade agreements can be significantly limited because of various domestic barriers that the Sri Lankan exporters face that undermine their competitiveness and increase costs. And to be fair, it is one of the observations raised in the Committee of Experts report as well, that it is very important to address the domestic constraints that the Sri Lankan producers and service providers face if they are to succeed in international markets. And without making a significant effort on that area, I would not say free trade agreements are useless, but definitely the benefits will be significantly limited.
So the expert committee points out that this is of no use to the country at this context, given the global lapses and the context of global economy. And also the expert committee report notes that the government is significantly restricted in terms of exercising its sovereignty and its authority over this agreement.
So there are two reasons that governments would enter trade agreements. One is the market access element, where you're thinking that the barriers in the other country is what is preventing your exports from succeeding, and as a result you're thinking that you want to actually remove those barriers so that your companies can succeed abroad. But the second one is what we call lock-in reforms. That is because in countries like Sri Lanka, there is one of the major problems in business environment is significant policy inconsistency. You basically remove taxes today, introduce tomorrow. There is a lot of going back and forth in terms of taxes regulations that makes it very difficult to do business in this country. And one of the ways that governments try to lock in reforms is by getting into internationally legally binding agreements, so that every time the government changes, the policy framework does not change, especially because we have a tendency to change policies due to political whims and fancies, which is not necessarily good for the country. So sometimes certain agreements are entered into with the objective of restricting the policy space. I don't have the inside knowledge to say whether this is the reason why the government entered, but that is definitely one of the objectives.
Very quickly, we're talking about policy inconsistency here, and something that we're talking about is the October 26th, the decision taken by the political changes that took place in the country and the subsequent changes to the economy. What is your view on this and the kind of impact on the economy going forward?
So definitely the policy uncertainty and policy inconsistency is already a big problem in the country, and what these kind of incidents does is it even increases the risk of doing business in Sri Lanka and increases the inconsistency in policies where you have governments deciding on policies mainly for the popular appeal and targeting the voter, but not necessarily thinking about the country.
Thank you very much, Subhashini, for your time here at Studio 24. We had with us Subhashini Abesinghe, Research Director of Verite Research. And with that, we'll take a short commercial break. We'll be back with more.
Welcome back, everyone. Let's get down to local news we have for you tonight. Controversy is nothing new in Sri Lankan politics, and the recent changes in the local political landscape has given rise to more questions than answers. With various defections happening along with talks of coalitions and alliances being formed, Sri Lanka Freedom Party's affiliations with the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna was at the heart of various comments. One particular faction even moved to say that they will go against the president if he continues to support the opposition leader Mahinda Rajapaksa and endorse the SLPP.
Well, that particular threat, however, was brushed off by some prominent members of both the SLFP and the SLPP. They instead heavily criticized former President Chandrika Bandaranayake Kumaratunga for her speculated attempt to make a return to Parliament by unseating an incumbent member of the House.
I was the coordinating secretary to the president until yesterday, and now I have resigned. Our friends in media asked us as to why we don't have the former President Mahinda Rajapaksa's and Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumartunga's photos on our banner. MP Mahinda Rajapaksa is not in our party anymore. He's the leader of the Flowerbud Party. We've lost respect for him. Although we have much respect for former President Chandrika Bandaranaike, we can't put up her photo on the banner because we would be criticized saying that we're doing her bidding. For the benefit of the party, we urge the president, as the chairman of the SLFP, that he must sever ties with the SLPP. We have 24 electorate coordinators, 1 governor and 18 SLFP parliamentarians out of 21, and they're clearly in our group. What use is there by continuing to stay in this party given the current situation? However, criticism by members of the organisation to protect the SLFP were brushed aside by prominent members of the UPFA. While that was brief, their scorn was, however, directed at former President Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumartunga. District coordinators are nervous at the moment because the president recently said at a meeting that he will remove every one of them. She has so much hatred at the moment. Former President Chandrika's problem is that President Maithripala Sirisena appointed Mahinda Rajapaksa as the Prime Minister. What else could he have done? If you weigh the bad deeds of Mahinda Rajapaksa against Ranil Wickremesinghe's, Ranil's are much worse. She's trying to go ahead with her personal vengeance.
අපගේ හිටපු ජනාධිපතිනිය චන්ද්‍රිකා කුමාරතුංග මැතිනිය ජාතිකල ඉස්තුවකින් එක්කෙනෙක් අස්කල්ලා ඒක ඇතුළට ඇවිල්ලා ඔන්න මොකද්ද කරන්න යනකොට ඔබතුමා දන්නවද මට වැඩිය හොඳ අනුශාසකනේ පක්ෂේ ඉතින් දීපු අනුශාසනාවක් නැහැ.
She was the advisor to the party, but she didn't give any advice. Members left the party mainly because of SLFP joined hands with the UNP. The remaining members will also leave when they sit on the side of the UNP.
මන් දන්නේ බෝඩ් ලෑල්ලේ අකුරු ටිකවත් ඉතුරු වෙයිද කියලා.
Now, meanwhile, members of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party have been weighing in on plans to restructure their party. It was in this backdrop that SLFP's General Secretary, Professor Rohana Lakshman Piyadasa, today revealed that their plans to change the name and symbol of the party during their restructuring process. He said that time has now come to re-establish the power of leftist political parties in the country's political landscape.
President Maithripala Sirisena today engaged in an observational tour at the head office of the SLFP. The head of state had specifically been attentive on getting the active participation of the organisations affiliated to the party. The president had emphasised the importance of party's advancement as a stronger political entity.
Not
really. I invited MP Mahinda Rajapaksa to come and join with the SLFP and the UPFA and strengthen these parties. They can do whatever they want, but we will indeed form the political front by gathering all the leftist parties, including the SLFP, and ensure victory. Later, a media briefing was held at the SLFP head office today. With these long-term changes, we are planning on changing the name, the structure and the symbol of the party. Instead of a UNP governing power, let's join together to establish a leftist and a nationalist political campaign. Our request is to immediately hold provincial council elections. During our cabinet, we agreed that the election can be held under the old electoral system. They can present the cabinet paper to Parliament and we will vote in favour of it. All they wanted was democracy and now they have it. So work accordingly. Government's next punishment is now revealed. It has stopped all state advertisements for both TV Derana and Hero Media organisations. I would like to question whether it's not media suppression.
Even before the so-called political crisis manifested in the country, there had been much criticism over the bond scam which took place at the central bank, with certain factions of the society subjecting certain politicians to reproach with allegations that the Prime Minister also was involved in the scam. Following the revelations by the Presidential Commission of Inquiry appointed to probe the matter, PTL duo Arjun Aloysius and Kasun Palisena were arrested. But beyond that, there had been precious little action. Experts maintain the stance that they're still struggling to calculate the loss incurred by the bond scam. To much of the dismay of certain people, especially the opposition, the PTL duo were granted bail on Tuesday. With their release, the topic of the bond scam has gotten a new lease of life and it has become the center of discussion once again.
One way or the other, we will start working towards appointing Mahinda Rajapaksa as the leader of the opposition. 2 months ago, the country had 2 prime ministers. Today, the country has 2 opposition leaders. Ranil Wickremesinghe refused to leave temple trees, and now former leader of the opposition, R. Sambandhan, is refusing to leave his office. What has happened to this country? Parliamentarian Wickramanayake also expressed his disappointment over the lack of action taken over the bond scam. The governor of the central bank says that the financial loss incurred by the scam is yet to be ascertained. If a scam of such magnitude has taken place, why aren't any action being taken yet?
A conflict within the United National Party seems to be brewing. It is alleged that with the number of members in the cabinet being limited to 30, there are disgruntled members within the party who did not receive ministerial portfolios. Although some were offered non-cabinet ministerial positions, they don't seem to be enough. Several UNP parliamentarians today moved to express their frustrations, while some moved to douse the perceived fire.
No one will become independent. Everyone is expressing their views, but at the same time, everyone cannot be made ministers. These young MPs will be made to work with ministries to help the process of development. In the meantime, members of the United National Party voiced their opinion on the alleged crisis within the party owing to the allocation of ministerial positions. Certain backbenchers are disappointed. Our backbenchers did a great job in protecting our party during the past 2 months. They might harbour some manner of disappointment owing to not receiving ministerial portfolios. I, as a member who helped the campaign against anti-democracy, is disappointed. They should be prepared to provide what they promised to the people. Our ministers are gearing up to follow the same path they did during the last 3 years. If our sacrifices go unnoticed, we will have to be independent until our needs are met.
The Central Committee meeting of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party is currently underway at the official residence of President Maithripala Sirisena. Heavyweights of the party were seen arriving at the premises for the meeting this evening.
Now, the Director Operations of the Anti-Corruption Force, Namal Kumara, who caused ripples across the nation when he revealed an alleged plot to assassinate the President and the former Defence Secretary, is yet again in the news. As a result of his revelations, former DIG Nalka De Silva, who headed the Terrorist Investigation Division, was interdicted and is currently in remand custody. Adding a twist to the controversy, it was revealed in court yesterday that Namal Kumara in fact had a checkered past, as he has submitted forged certificates to join the Sri Lanka Army and Air Force. In light of this revelation, he moved to hold a media briefing to clarify the revelation made by the CID.
The facts which were presented to court by the CID about preparing forged documents are correct. I admit that fact with respect to court. I even knew that it will be known to everyone when I planned to reveal the plot to assassinate the President. But I was not in a position to hide the assassination plot just to save my name. However, the CID has only uncovered 1% of the information so far. They have 99% more to uncover.
Well, outside politics, Deshamanya, or Pride of the Nation Award, is the second highest national honour awarded by the government of Sri Lanka as a civil honour. The award is only second to the Sri Lanka Abhimanya title. It is seldom that we find a person accorded this honour renouncing it, but that's exactly what happened today.
Having joined the Ceylon civil service at a very young age, Dr. Devanesan Nesaiya made it to the 3rd CCS batch in 1959 before its abolition in 1963. Although Dr. Nesaiya was a Grade 1 officer of the Sri Lanka Administrative Service, he often served at lower positions, and it was after many recommendations that he was appointed District Secretary in Jaffna. In honour of his contribution to the civil service, he was awarded with the Deshamanya title or Pride of the Nation Award in 2017 by President Maithripala Sirisena. After the political crisis erupted in October last year, Dr. Nesaiya wrote an open letter to the President on the 7th of November from Australia. In it he said, quote, "My family, friends and I were greatly elated when you were elected President. That elation and hope, Your Excellency, has given way to disappointment over your very blatant flouting of our 70-year-old democracy." Unquote. After returning to the island recently, he today arrived at the Presidential Secretariat to return the Pride of the Nation Award and medal.
I was working in the public service from 1959 to 1995, 36 years without a break. Then I was very proud to receive this medal, but because of what has happened recently, some actions by the President, I feel obliged to return the medal. I was very happy to receive it and very proud to receive it, so it's not something which I didn't appreciate. I very much appreciated it, but I felt compelled to return it.
And we'll be back with your international news after this short break. To stay with us at First at 9. Well, in international news, the Saudi Arabian government has finally launched the trial of 11 individuals over the murder of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi 3 months after he was killed at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. State media say that prosecutors have asked for the death penalty for 5 of the defendants. Despite there being various versions as to the manner of his death, prosecutors say the journalist was murdered in a rogue operation by agents sent to persuade him to return to the kingdom. The international community heaped pressure on Saudi Arabia to provide answers and launch an investigation into the murder. Although the Saudis have now started their own trial, Saudi Arabia has refused Turkey's request to extradite 18 suspects for trial, including 16 alleged agents who it says flew to Istanbul to carry out the killing. In November, Saudi's deputy public prosecutor Rajaya Salman said investigators had concluded that an intelligence officer ordered Khashoggi's murder, applying a lethal injection inside the consulate on the 2nd of October. Then he went on to say that the officer had been asked while persuading the dissident journalist to return to the Gulf Kingdom.
In other international stories, South Korea's spy agency says that North Korean diplomatic and its ambassador to Italy has gone missing. The announcement follows unconfirmed reports that Pyongyang's top diplomat in Italy has sought asylum from an unidentified Western country. Jo Song-gil, the acting North Korean ambassador to Rome, is the son of son-in-law of high-ranking North Korean officials. The last senior diplomat to defect was the deputy ambassador in London, Pa Yong-ho. He abandoned his post in 2016 along with his wife and children. He defected to South Korea. As one of the highest-ranking officials to ever defect from the North, his move was seen as a blow to Kim Jong-un's regime. He would go on to urge the world to spread information in North Korea to undermine Kim's status among his people. Speaking after a briefing from the spy agency today, a government parliamentarian told reporters that the diplomat fled Rome's embassy more than a month ago. South Korea's National Intelligence Service, which interrogates all defectors from the North, told lawmakers that that they had not had any contact from him since then. The agency would not confirm that he is trying to defect to another country.
Well, that's all the news on First at 9 for tonight. Thank you for joining us. I'm Indivara Yamwat.
And I'm Mahesh Johnny. Have a good night.